You are looking live.
There's something sacred about this stadium and its setting. There's nothing like this venue, in my opinion, in all of sports.
The setting is about as good as anywhere in the country. With the San Gabriel Mountains in the backdrop, it's always picturesque.
We're going to play football. He's going for the corner. He's got it. Vince Young scores.
Hello and welcome to episode 9 of Rose Bowl Live. I am your host from the Rose Bowl Stadium, Brian Brantley, and on behalf of the entire stadium team and CEO Daryl Dunn, we hope that you are safe during these challenging times. As we head into our 9th episode of our new virtual platform at America Stadium, we thank the thousands of folks who have tuned in to hear from an all-star set of guests who are key members of our Rose Bowl family. Today's guest needs really no introduction. If I have to introduce you to him, he probably didn't hit you coming across the middle catching a pass. He's a 4-time Super Bowl champion. He's a 10-time Pro Bowl player. He's on the NFL 75th and 100th anniversary teams. He's part of the 1980s and 1990s All-Decade team. He was a national champion college football in 1978. His jersey number 42 was retired by the San Francisco 49ers. And lastly, he is a member of the College Football Hall of Fame and the class of 2000 Pro Football Hall of Fame. Today, we welcome Mr. Ronnie Lott. Ronnie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, man. This is an honor. Truly appreciate this opportunity to talk, spend time with you, and more importantly, just to have some fun, man. I mean, as you pointed out, and others are pointing out right now, we haven't had a lot of fun. And with the virus, with the protesting, and with all of it, it's tough. It's tough for all of us, but it's a moment right now for us to have a good time.
Absolutely, and Ronnie, obviously we hope that you and your family are first and foremost safe during the pandemic and healthy with all that. And right now it is a challenging time, as you mentioned. So to ask you a question about that and what the thoughts of you have as being a black man in society today.
Well, it starts off with the idea of what did you learn and what have I learned and knowing a lot about what my dad stands for, and knowing all of what he went through. And so I go back, I was born out in New Mexico. We moved to Washington, D.C. And we moved to D.C. around 63. And as we moved there was this moment. And the moment was centered around having riots. And literally within a quarter of a mile, you could see the 7-Eleven being burnt down. And then all of a sudden you could see the troops coming in. And here I am, a young man and a younger brother, younger sister, and we're all looking at this. And the thing that I remember about the moment is that, you mean this is real? I mean, when you see stuff like that, you don't believe that it's real. Mm-hmm. And then when you see the national, everybody, in, and then they put you on curfew, so you go through all that. And the reason I'm telling you the story is that I felt the same way. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is that you feel the same way of being unsure, you feel fear, you're scared. And the reason that all of those kind of emotions pop up is because all of a sudden you look at this, you're saying, because of what? And you look at the injustice of life, mm-hmm. the social justice that we all try to exercise every day. Mm-hmm. I was talking to Willie Lanier, and as I was talking with him, we both sat there and we said, how can this happen? Mm-hmm. How could he not have any emotions? Mm-hmm. And the tough part, and what we were trying to talk about was the emotion of here's a man, trying to ask for air. And I think that every human being deserves that. So it's hard for all of us to understand and see something that we can't believe it, because we value life, and I value all my friends and all the people that I've come across, and I know this, you know this, because we all come across people that sometimes don't like me. Ohio State fans that might not like me. Fans that might not, necessarily agree with all the things that I'm about. And they're willing to voice it, and you hear it sometimes, but you respect them because you have relationships. And so for me, I've always felt like there's this idea of when somebody's breathing, you respect them. And my dad taught me that because him being in the military, him working his tail off, him making sure that he could do all the things that he needed to do to take care of us. I'm always indebted to my dad, and I'm always indebted to what I've learned, I've seen from so many amazing people who have fought to try to give us freedom, to try to make sure that we have all the things that we need to have to live in society and to be a part of a great society where we have all rights.
Yes, Ronnie, well said. And one of the things, at the Rose Bowl, we like to think we're a uniter of people, and people come to the Rose Bowl for fun and entertainment and memories. And we are America Stadium because of that. Not only the Rose Bowl game and UCLA football, but concerts and other events, major soccer events. But one of the things I've heard recently, actually, is the society should be more like the locker room. It's all encompassing, and everybody's accepted because you have one common goal. And I know your journey, as you just mentioned, started as in a military family and what you saw as you were growing up. Where did your that sports come from, and when did you start to see, before you got to that major league locker room and you got to be with everybody? You started at a young age, so where did those dreams come from, and how was that? How, what sports and all those type of things did you play when you were growing up?
Well, for me, I started off going from Albuquerque, then Washington, D.C. And when I got to D.C., I started to learn a lot. I started to learn that I was going to be a Baltimore Orioles fan. I started to learn that I was going to be a Washington Redskins fan. And I started to learn that I was going to be a Boston Celtics fan. And when I look back at the people that played on those teams, clearly you saw character, and you saw values, and you saw commitment, and you saw will. And so all of a sudden, you're not only watching these guys, now you're trying to emulate, you're trying to understand who they are, why they are who they are. Meaning, it's great that they're great athletes, but then you start to realize that there's this substance behind it. And you start to realize that these guys have some incredible values. And so when you think of Frank Robertson, when you think of all of what he was able to do, or you think of Charlie Taylor, and that's Wear 42, you think of all of what he stood for, and you can go down the list, and when you think of Bill Russell, and my point is, all of those guys had character, they had ways of how they went about their business. Now for me, what I didn't know that I had to learn was the challenges, freedom. Some of these guys had to walk in the back of the hotel to get to, they couldn't come in the front of the hotel. So think about that. And you think about those kind of moments, and you start to realize we have to become like far rights. We have, but we still have a long ways to go. And it's clear that we have a long ways to go because of the injustice we just recently saw. So, yes, those guys kind of framed it up for me. I wanted to model my life, be a lot like those guys. At the same time, they taught me more than just the game. They were examples of how to be great leaders and great people.
Yeah, that's excellent, Ronnie. And there's a lot, so many things from that what you just said, and you know, and actually as you're progressing as a youth, as a youngster, and you're growing up, and you're out in Rialto, California, and you're getting to that high school level now, and you formulated these things, and now all of a sudden you are, you know, on the list. You're playing football. A lot of folks don't realize that you actually played basketball too. So what was that high school, and then you started getting noticed? What was that like? You know, what other schools, and when did you kind of realize that, you know, there's something here?
Well, you know, the thing is, now all of a sudden you go from Washington D.C. and you're playing ball and you're playing in that environment, and then you move to the West Coast, and you move to the West Coast, different feelings, different environment, and what I found myself realizing is that, you know, how do you get in the huddle, and how do you learn how to get along, and how do you learn how to get along with people that you haven't even really met? And one of the things that I always prided myself on is that life is about the huddle every day. Some days you're going to be in that huddle, and somebody's going to disagree with you, and yet you're going to still have to figure out how to play with it. And you have to figure out how to bring the best quality you can in yourself. So for me, I think one of the challenges sometimes is, as we think about being in our huddles, it's about also looking at the other side and trying to understand what you can do for that human being, how you can help that human being, how can you lift them up so they can see success. So that's the things I learned from my dad. When I got to California, I can tell you, man, it was interesting because we didn't have that snow, and you could play every day. And I used to play with these guys every day, and it was phenomenal. And it was just phenomenal because I could play every sport. And you know, I wake up playing, and I go to bed playing. And the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, the values that I learned about never giving up, the values I learned about losing and having the capabilities of understanding that losing can hurt so much. It's so painful. And yet you still got to shake their hand. You still got to find a way to go to the other side and realize that no matter what color that person is, you're going to tip your hat, you're going to pay your respect. And so those type of things, to me, are the type of things that I think that we want to believe that everybody has that. You know, we want to believe that everybody has that. When I look at Dr. Edwards, and watching him, when I saw him with the 49ers, and one of the reasons that Bill Walsh brought him in, he brought him in because he thought that he could help the players integrate better to the community. Here's a guy that is the head coach, Bill Walsh, more concerned with making sure that the players can be integrated into society in a way where they can be comfortable. And so one of the things that I always think about is that it is bigger than the game. When you have just thinking about making sure that you fit in with not just teams, you fit in with the community. It's not about sports. And guys like Dr. Edwards, who over the years, if you think about his presence, what he stands for, you start to realize, man, that there are people like that in your life that you had a chance to emulate as a kid and watch it and to see what he was able to do. And so in California, when I got there, and going to high school, it just changed everything. And then, of course, all of a sudden you got people knocking on your door and wanted to be Johnny Rodgers.
Yes.
Johnny Rodgers is phenomenal, Nebraska.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden I see this guy named Dennis Thurman playing safety at USC. And I'm like, God, man, ooh, that was great to get on DT. And, you know, they recruited me. And the other thing I got to say is that, man, I had utmost respect for John. I really played basketball for John. Wasn't good enough, you know, a scholarship there, but no. What he thought about the game, I mean, I still read his, you know, I read some of his books and really appreciate some of the philosophies, how he thinks about the team. So
Sure.
if we go and read those kind of, think about it, man, we went and read John Wooden's book. We made it mandatory. Everybody read his book. I promise you, man, this country be so much better.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Hands down. While you're at USC, you know, most people don't realize that you were actually on offense, not defense, to start. And they had you switch. It obviously worked out pretty well for you.
Well,
So,
you know what? For me,
yeah.
They always had me on defense.
Oh, they always had you on defense. Okay.
It was that other guy. Marcus
Right. The other guy, and I was going to bring that up. So they put you out there. Yes, Marcus Allen, who was at that same time frame while you were at USC. He switched from defense to offense.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. And he was also your roommate.
Yes, he was my roommate, and we had a wonderful time. Stevie Wonder every night, having him play him singing and playing the piano. Marcus was an entertainer, and has always been a great entertainer and a great human being. Just a great person, and so get to see. You know, we didn't make the Rose Bowl my first year. We go to the Blue Bonnet Bowl, but the second year we end up.
I mean, and I noticed like on those teams. I mean, you had, as you said, you had Dennis Thurman, you had a Bruce Matthews, and you had all these unbelievable players on campus on your team. What was that like? I mean, because that you know, I don't know if too many people have that kind of. Especially at USC at that time, and you guys were obviously excellent and all over the place. But that's pretty impressive to have those many Hall of Famers and Pro Bowlers and all that on a college team.
Yeah, you know, at the time when you walk in, especially as a freshman, I was from this little town, Rialto, and I have buddies who are all looking at me like, man, where are you from? And the funny thing to me is that you get into the proven mode, and the proven mode of life is, you got to go out and you got to compete. And one of the great things that John Robinson talked about all the time, you learn to compete to be the best. And I think a lot of us, when we think about competing, there's something in your soul that either gets you to understand how bad you want it. And I think one of the things that I love about Coach Robinson is that was something that he was constantly looking at, constantly trying to find out about your ability to go out and compete. And the thing that was so interesting to me was that he even said one day, he goes, Ronnie, you're a great competitor. You're not competing in the classroom. And I was like, he's like, you're not competing. You got to bring the same attitude, the same desire to the classroom. And I realized at the time He's absolutely
Mhm.
and I had to compete in the classroom and decided that I would go to summer school and do all the things that I had to do. But I loved that environment because we had so many great athletes.
Mhm.
We had Marcus, we had Anthony Munoz, we had Bruce Matthews,
Yes. Yeah.
we had
Yes.
so many talented people that went on to be incredible football players. And the thing that I love is that all those guys will tell you it's about working out, trying to compete against some of the best ever. And trust me, when Charlie White coming at you, the way that he would attack you, and you had to then buckle up and try to bring him down in practice, and you realize that here's a Heisman Trophy winner coming at you, you know that you had to bring your best. So, unbelievable environment because of the people and the quality of who they were, and some of the best things I've learned in my life from that group of guys. Eric Scoggins, who passed away, but he was a man of character, a man who just gave so much to all of us. And so those stories still are in my heart, and I love who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, that's a perfect segue into, as you said, their freshman year, you end up going to the Bluebonnet Bowl, but then both your sophomore and junior years, you come to Pasadena, and obviously back then, USC and UCLA shared the Coliseum. So you finally get to come over here. You play in the Rose Bowl. It is for, well, I guess back then it was kind of for a national title, but you really didn't know if you're gonna get voted a national title. So let's go through that game, those two games. So first one was against Michigan for the national title in your sophomore year, and then Ohio State, which was a 1-versus-2 matchup, and which it sounded kind of bizarre because you beat Ohio State and weren't the national champion. So let's talk about that first one against Michigan. What do you remember about that time and coming to the Rose Bowl and playing over the sights and sounds and going into that game?
Well, first thing you remember is that you're playing Michigan. And the reason that you remember that is that, Coach Robinson would always talk about the quality of the team, the character of the coach. And, Schembeck, who was an unbelievable coach, he would talk about them, and they were friends, and they talked about how they would, practice against each other, how they would, describe the character of each other. And so all of a sudden you got Coach Robinson, you got Coach Schembeck, both of them talking about each other, and both of them having ultimate respect for each other. So that game to me was a game that it was another, hey, you can earn your respect. And going into the game, they had a great quarterback that could run around, do a lot of different things. And then they had a great receiver that was phenomenal. And then they had some guys on that defensive team that were pretty good. And matter of fact, one of the guys I ended up playing with the 49ers, a guy named Dwight Hicks.
Yeah.
So, talented teams, a very competitive game. And to me, when you look back at that game, the one thing that I do remember that everybody still talks about, if they do talk about anything about that game, is the fumble. And they talk about the fumble and the ball. Did Charlie White have the ball when he went up? And did he have it when he was crossing the line? Of course, he had the ball there. Of course. So, yes. But that moment, to me, when I look back on that game, that was a defining moment. But arguably two great football teams with a lot of talent. And the thing that I also would say is that Coach Robinson, in that game, You got to remember, he would always share with us about how in the fourth quarter we got the game. And a lot of times when you have coaches, they tell you things, and then it happens and it plays out. And Charlie White, and he would say, he goes, "You're going to win this game in the fourth quarter," and he would talk about that, how we're going to finish. And it happened, and Charlie dominated in the fourth quarter, and really, was amazing because you can see from the sideline how dominant he wanted to be. So it was, to me, it was an amazing experience. Amazing experience.
So now you go, you win the game, you were national champions, you go into the next year, you get to the Rose Bowl again, and this time it's a 1 versus 2, and another unbelievable game. I have to teach you because you almost had the game clinching interception. It ended up being the game clinching deflection, and I love. And for those of you who are watching, you can check it out. And Ronnie's reaction to just almost probably picking and taking to the house, but it was a game-winning deflection, and USC goes on to beat number 1 Ohio State. How was your momentum going from that first year playing in the winning the national title, going into the second year in your junior year? What was that all like? So that seemed like everybody was really ready to get back and win it again.
Well, I got to tell you that, first of all, the first game, it would be hard for me to not say that the magic of the whole week, and the magic of the whole week meaning that all the things that led up to the Michigan game, all the things of going to Lowry's and eating, having that contest of eating the meat and all that stuff, all the pageantry that comes along with the Rose Bowl, phenomenal. I mean, amazing. That's what you also realize, that when you actually are in the game, there's a game every day of activities and things you have to do. So having that experience, going through that, loving it, enjoying it, and then the win against Michigan, now all of a sudden we come back and we have we have a pretty good team. Matter of fact, the team is very talented. We basically run the table. We tied Stanford, and that game in itself was, we were winning 21-0, and they came back and tied the game up. And then all of a sudden that leads us to the Rose Bowl, and now we're in the Rose Bowl, and here we are against Ohio State, and they have a really good football team. And the reason they have a really good football team is because I got a chance to meet a lot of those guys over the years, and have the utmost respect for some of the guys. Matter of fact, one of the guys unfortunately passed away, but was a person that I used to admire, because Todd Bell was just a football person that you could look at and you knew that he had the right compass. He had the right tenacity. He had the right energy. He reminds me of Kenny Easley, the great UCLA safety, that he had this type of characteristics. For me, into the game, right away, I'm trying to outdo and outduel him, because I have so much respect. Matter of fact, I have his jerseys, that he gave me that game that we exchanged jerseys. And so, Todd was phenomenal, but going to that game, another nail biter, another tough game, a game literally, as you know, all of us were sitting there trying to figure out how are we going to win this thing. and we found a way to win it. And I thought it was going to be a national championship win, but somehow they gave it to Alabama, and not sure how that happened. When you go, when you don't lose the game, tie, you don't lose the game. I'm not sure how that happened, but I'm glad to know that those rules have changed right now, because you get a chance to play it out. Winning that game was a big deal.
Absolutely, and and that kind of leads us into 1981. You get drafted 8th by the San Francisco 49ers, and for most of the people who are probably watching, they probably know, or some of them may not know, but San Francisco wasn't very good. They had won a total of 8 games the previous 2 seasons when you got drafted by the 49ers in 1981. And to say that there was an immediate turnaround is an understatement. And I know Coach Walsh was there. I know Joe was there. But you guys come in, you guys go 13-3 and end up going to the Super Bowl against the Bengals. The rest is history. You win the Super Bowl. And obviously going through that run, there's Dwight Clark, the late great Dwight Clark, and the catch. And then also the goal line stand in the Super Bowl. So what do you take away from that season? What do you remember going into that rookie year, and what you guys brought to the table, and those specific the Dwight Clark and the catch, and the goal line stand in the Silverdome?
Yeah, I think what I took into that season was first of all, we're rookies, and as you know, when you're trying to figure it out, you're also trying to prove it. And I think that what you're trying to prove is that you belong. And not only belong, but again, that notion of how do you compete? How do you get after it? How do you go after the idea of knowing that every day you got to get better? And I think one of the great things that I learned from Bill Walsh was the idea of excellence. I mean, I went from learning the idea of competing, fighting, and doing everything you possibly can to win, to learning the idea of excellence. And Bill was, one of the best at teaching excellence. And so you take that, and all of a sudden you give excellence to our secondary, and that's coached by George Seifert and coached by Ray Rhodes. And then all of a sudden you take and give excellence to a guy that, to me, is the best quarterback ever played, and that's Joe Montana. And then you give excellence to guys like Freddie Solomon, and you give excellence to guys like Dwight Clark. And my point is that all of a sudden, excellence becomes the standard of life and the way you go about it. And I believe that all of a sudden, everything that had happened with the 49ers in the past, the notion of it became around excellence. And the notion of it was that you have to perfect your game. And Bill would tell you if you didn't. And so every day in practice, there were moments that he had this little book. He would write down these little things, and you would sit there and I hope he's not writing something about me. And so you got those fears of saying, I don't want to let him down. I don't want to let him down. And I think the thing that I started to realize is that the fear and the excellence went hand in hand. Meaning, you didn't want to make a mistake. You didn't want to disappoint them. You didn't want to disappoint your teammates. You wanted to compete like I did at SC. And I think all of a sudden, you got the combination of a lot of guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like Eric Wright from Missouri, like Carlton Williamson from Pittsburgh, like Dwight Hicks from Michigan. And all of a sudden, you got guys that are just thinking about excellence.
That's
To me, what I loved was that all of a sudden, this guy, 87, does something that no one didn't think. No one couldn't believe that we would beat the Dallas Cowboys. And all of a sudden, he makes this incredible catch. The catch that today is probably, arguably, one of the best plays in the history of the NFL. And that play signified the idea of excellence. That it's about trying. It's about giving your all. It's about everything you can. And so for me, I look back at that journey, that particular year, as one of the greatest things that had, just arguably one of the, I mean, I love my kids, but that was the fourth kid. That was the fourth and fifth kid right there, man. And the reason it was the fourth and fifth kid is that there were just so many characteristics that I got out of that experience. And then the other thing that I got to mention to you, and the reason I got to mention to you, because it's Rose Bowl Live, that we go to Pontiac. So we go to Pontiac, and we're sitting up in Detroit, and it's cold, and it's snowing, and you know, we're like, man, this is unbelievable. But I run into the stadium, and when I run into the stadium, I'm thinking to myself, it's only 65,000 fans. Where's the rest of the fans? In my mind, I'm looking for the Rose Bowl. I'm looking for all of the Rose Bowl, all of the just the beauty. I'm looking for it. And I run up here and I look around. I'm like, oh man. And I'm now that it calms me down. I'm not nervous. And I realized that, man, this is Super Bowl, man. This is no different than the Rose Bowl. I had to say that because, man, the Rose Bowl, it framed up possibilities of life could be. And the reason that it framed that up for me is that all of a sudden, if I could be victorious there, we could be victorious at Pontiac. And it turns out that, man, we had an incredible game, both stands, and some incredible plays. Eric Wright makes an incredible interception in the game. When Dan Buns does an incredible job on the goal line, stopping their running back, and Archie Reese. We have a meeting, you know, Pete Johnson, we stop him. Again, an idea of excellence. And of course, Joe Montana and the gang and what they were able to do on the offense. So it was a great week for us that led to us even thinking maybe there's more in life. And it kind of led to some thoughts and ideas about us trying to get even better.
Absolutely, and it was, and it makes me laugh when you talk about how small the Silverdome was to compare to the Rose Bowl. Figuring that five of the top six Super Bowl games, largest attendance is at the Rose Bowl. So, but I and for those folks who are sending in questions, we'll get to those here in just a minute. But we have some more to go here with Ronnie. But we got to talk about two specific things with the 49ers, and that, you know, obviously, let's talk about the woo hits. You were already known in college as being a hard hitter, and you were a corner, and then you changed to safety, and obviously that did not stop. You carried that.
The approach is that all of a sudden, man, you're emulating the guys that you watched growing up. playing. When you think about buckets, and you think about Tatum, you think about some of the guys that were like that you watched play, and you saw the kind of fire that they brought to those type of moments. And for me, I've always felt like if they could do it, then I got to match it. And my point about this is that the great Deacon Jones, when I was a kid, I met him. And I remember one day he said to me, he goes, man, you be the best. I want you to be the best. And I don't care if you're the best garbage man. I want you to be the best garbage man. I want you to make sure you do everything in your power. And I remember looking at him, thinking to myself, having someone share that perspective of wanting you to know that that's what it means, and then to actually watch him, and actually meet him, and actually see him, and then actually be in that environment. And so he inspired me in so many ways. And you have those kind of moments where you bump into somebody like that, or somebody of that magnitude tells you that, hey, this is what you should do. And I had to. For me, I've always been one of those guys that you gotta find a way to fulfill what somebody is trying to give you a gift. And I was very fortunate over the years of playing, where you would meet these kind of incredibly, just if you meet Dick Butkus, or if you meet Ray Diskey, or you meet Willis Lanier, and they talk to you about their pursuit, you gotta listen. You gotta listen. You gotta understand where their spirit and where their heart is. So, yeah, they helped me understand what Woo was about.
I'm sure they did. That's for sure. All those names, is just the greats of the NFL. Of course, there's the infamous story about the finger in the hit against the Cowboys, and it's kind of taken a life of its own. It's legendary. What is the because I don't think people realize that it was a really serious injury. It was a pretty serious injury. It was pretty bad. So what can you tell us about that? The finger story, I guess.
Yeah. First of all, to me, when I think about it, I think about all our men in service, because I've seen so many of them battle for ways, do what they have to do to survive, and so and I think about them because of all the sacrifices that they make every day for a lot of reasons. But the thing that I want you to know is that we all are trying to find courage. We're all trying to make sacrifices, and for me, when it happened, first of all, I didn't expect that could happen. Number one, and then when it did happen, and knowing that all of a sudden here you are, you got the tip of your finger, taken off. The pain, which I think is really an amazing thing, is how do we deal with the pain? And again, it's all the pain of somebody losing their life. So pain is it's a tough thing, and so next week all of a sudden we're into playoffs, trying to play, and the coach said, hey, you can't play. And, I'm like, no, coach, I think I can play. I want to play. And so now you're in the game playing, And you're playing because you think you can make a difference. You think you can play a role in winning. And we go up to New York, and unfortunately, we did not win the game. We lost the game, and they took it to us. Joe Morris had an incredible game. Phil Simms had an incredible game, and so all of a sudden you lose the game, and for me, I think of the Springer story as something that I've seen with my dad's friends.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That you don't really talk about it because you realize it's a part of life.
Mm-hmm.
You don't talk about it because it's not the most prevalent thing in my life that makes me who I am.
Mm-hmm.
But when you do talk about it, you make sure that people understand that you made the sacrifice for the greater good of all.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason you make those sacrifices is because your teammates are expecting you to do anything else you can do to stay on the field. And so I think that notion for me has always been a commitment to the locker room, a commitment to the friends that I've met over the years, a commitment to their work.
Mm-hmm.
So I meet a lot of guys that sit on the bench. They don't come off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
They make you better. And they make you better because they're making the same type of sacrifices that I with my finger, meaning they're giving their all. And the reason they're giving their all is that they're showing that that's my way of paying my respect to you. I want you to see it in a way where you know that you're going to see the best of me. So those type of characteristics, when you have that in the locker room,
Mm-hmm.
whether you win or lose, and if you have that in the locker room, then it's a great feeling. It's a great feeling to be in the locker room amongst people who know what it's like to make sacrifices.
Yeah, that's great, and it's great to remember our men and women in service who are making the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. I'm going to get to one more question, and then we're going to do some fan questions. But the one I was going to bring up was your former teammate Eric Scoggins. You endowed a scholarship for him at USC. Fantastic transformational gift. Can you talk about, because it's great when people give back in the community in whatever way they can. And here you were supporting USC, your alma mater, and your former teammate. And why was that important to you in giving back to USC and specifically to your teammate, Eric?
Well, first of all, you got to know the human being. And when you know the man, and you know what he stands for, and you know what he gave us, and you know what he gave to all people, and you know the ultimate sacrifice, you realize that guys God gave that relationship for a lot of reasons. The way he lives his life through ALS, lived his life through ALS, showed me so much more character than you can imagine. And the reason that I think about him a lot is that there are so many moments in your life where you feel like you can't, feel like you're not strong enough, like you have the grit or the grind to make it happen. And then you realize that he was a defensive back. He was one of us. And then they put him a linebacker. And he made the sacrifice to move the linebacker. He really didn't want it. And then he becomes the MVP of the Alabama SC game. and start to understand that Eric's going to show up. He's going to show up. But Eric also showed up saying, hey, Ronnie, we're graduating. And here's why we're going to graduate. He's a president school. We're going to go to summer school. We're going to go to summer school every summer. And my point to you is that there's times people in your life that they know that, and there are things bigger than you. And you have to think about things bigger than yourself. And so this is my way of saying, hey, Eric, you taught me that you're bigger than yourself. And hopefully, some of these young men and got lined up to see his teacher a lot. Relationship in life, and very good friend, his family, his mom. So yeah, very dynamic person. What's it? Pastor.
Yeah.
Family, the Scoggins family.
Yeah.
All Smith, they all go to games together.
That's good.
It's more people than
Right.
what's just
Right.
and I hope kids and other people learn the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make sure that you extend your life.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Why we here.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's
Yeah. That's great and absolutely fantastic, Ronnie. And now we'll squeeze in some questions that are coming in from Facebook and YouTube. And one of the questions is for someone who's in starting out in high school, has the goal of playing college football, and chasing their dreams. What advice would you give to some young aspiring football players to make it up through the high school ranks and possibly play college?
Well, first of all, like Deacon said, frame up your mind, be the best at whatever it is that you're going to do. Don't limit that, past to just thinking that you just want to be the best football player, but be the best at whatever it is, so you can understand that those values are important to you. The other thing that I would ask him to understand is, man, exhaust every moment. Here we are, and I think about exhausting every breath, every moment, and the reason that I try to think about that is that there's going to be a day when that moment comes where you can't. And so, reality is that is your purpose for living, is to give all you can while you can. And if you can do that, knowing that your focus on making others better. And so that young man is going to take those type of ingredients, and I hope that he understands that he's going to apply that to his family, he's going to apply that to his friends, he's going to apply that to anybody that's in his life, and he's going to find a way to lift people up. And if he can do that on a consistent basis, and when I see him putting on that uniform in college, that's when you know that dreams come true. That's when you know that you have value, purpose, and meaning in your life. Because even if he doesn't make it, he still is letting people know that I've exhausted all my.
Yeah, it's awesome. With today's NFL, which is obviously pass happy, and when you sit down and watch a game and you sit down and how you played and the rules back then and till now, how tough of an adjustment of how you played in today's NFL? How can there be a Ronnie Lott today? In that regard in today's NFL.
First of all, there are a lot of Ronnie Lotts right now. and so when I saw Jalen Ramsey, and when I see the kid Adams in New York, and so all of a sudden I can go down the list, man, and start naming names of guys that I like and guys that I watch and people that I enjoy and admire about the game of football. And the reason why is, man, I love their pursuit. I love the excellence. Now, what you're really asking is, can you play around the rules? And I'm going to tell you this. Barry Bonds told me this. He goes, well, Ronnie, when they changed the strike zone, I adjusted. I practiced. I went to work. I got better. And so you don't become Barry Bonds. You don't become Barry Bonds knowing that every pitch, he can see it. And my point to you is that the strike zone now in the game is totally different. You can't up near the head. You can't touch him near the head. You can't hit him below the knee. And so there are spots. And the question is, when you do hit somebody, you got to hit at that spot. You got to be laser focused. No different than Ali. No different than Tyson. You got to find the spot. And then you got to work at it. You got to practice it. You got to practice it. And you got to change all the elements of how you play. Now, people say, you mean you can relearn that? Yes. And the reason why you can relearn that, because I'm capable. And the reason I'm capable is because I think I'm very intelligent. And the reason I think I'm very intelligent is because I know right from wrong. And I'm that my mother, if I got fined $50,000, my mother's going to come out of stands and she's going to let me know that you can't do that. And so my point to you is that you have the peer pressure, you have the way of learning how to relearn, and knowing that you can relearn any aspect of the game. And then the next thing is what Bill would say is that excellence of coming back, working and working and working and working and working to be the best you can be. So yeah, the game, if I was in the game, I had to change my style and I had to do it the way a lot of guys are doing right now. They had to change their style. A lot of these kids will tell you these are the rules that have happened the last couple of years. It's changing the game. But the great players are all adjusting. They're all finding a way to get better. And that's what I love is that you can see it. You can see guys coming up, trying to hit a guy, and then finding a way to use their shoulder, getting their head out the way. So you're seeing those things happening day in, day out. And the numbers are saying, the reason why I know the numbers are saying this is because the league is telling everyone that the numbers of us not having concussions, not having fouls, it's going down. It's definitely going in the opposite direction. So that tells me that you are seeing players that are intelligent, smart, getting better.
Oh, awesome. Ronnie, we could do this all day. I would love to. I mean, this is absolutely fantastic, and thank you so much. And for all the people who sent in questions today, thank you so much for participating and jumping in. This is a really special day for us at the Rose Bowl and Rose Bowl Live to have Hall of Famer, first ballot Hall of Famer Ronnie Lott, class of 2000, went in with his teammate Joe Montana on that Hall of Fame class, College Football Hall of Fame as well. And it's just a special day for us. So we thank Ronnie Lott for being here today and taking some time out of his busy schedule to chat with us. Please tune in next week. We're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to have a musical guest. We'll have Brandon Boyd from the band Incubus on Rose Bowl Live. So we're looking forward to that. So please tune in for that. And I will leave you today with this quote from the great Jackie Robinson. And we all know Jackie broke barriers, and he stood up for a lot of various things. And one of the things, and he has some great lines and quotes, but one that we'll leave you with today is a life is not important except in the impact it has on others' lives. And we hope that we take that message with us as we go about our days and our weeks and our months coming up, and that we come together and use sports as a uniting tool, especially at America Stadium, the Rose Bowl. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, Ronnie Lott. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.